Thanksgiving Day has always been a cherished tradition in the Turner family. Every year, they gathered at their ancestral home in the quaint town of Rosewood, a picturesque place that seemed untouched by time. This year, however, Thanksgiving would take a dark and unforgettable turn. The Turner family's Thanksgiving feast was nothing short of legendary. With Grandma Edith's recipes handed down for generations, the dining table was laden with turkey, cranberry sauce, stuffing, and an assortment of delectable sides. The air was filled with the warm aroma of roasted turkey, and laughter echoed through the house as family members shared stories and caught up on each other's lives. Among the guests was young Emily, the Turners' 10-year-old daughter. Her excitement knew no bounds as she eagerly awaited her turn to taste Grandma Edith's famous pecan pie. However, Emily had another reason to be excited this Thanksgiving. Her mother, Sarah, had given her a vintage porcelain doll as a special gift, which had once belonged to her grandmother. The doll, named Charlotte, was a beautiful but eerie-looking figure with glassy, unblinking blue eyes and long, curly hair. Its delicate dress was made from antique lace that had yellowed with time. Emily was entranced by the doll's antique charm, and she held on to it close throughout the evening. As the Thanksgiving dinner wound down and the family began to disperse, Emily's fascination with the doll grew. She could swear she heard faint whispers coming from Charlotte. Her family dismissed her claims, attributing them to an overactive imagination, and encouraged her to play with her new toy in the attic, a place filled with dusty old trinkets and forgotten memories. With Charlotte in hand, Emily made her way to the attic, the creaky wooden stairs echoing with each step. The attic was dimly lit, and the late afternoon sun cast eerie, elongated shadows across the room. Emily placed Charlotte on an old rocking chair and started to explore the attic, uncovering a treasure trove of forgotten relics. Hours passed, and darkness began to envelop the attic. Emily, engrossed in her discoveries, paid little attention to the time. Suddenly, she heard a soft, almost inaudible voice. She turned, expecting to see her mother calling her for dinner. Instead, she found herself facing the doll. The porcelain doll, Charlotte, had shifted from the rocking chair to the corner of the attic. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she realized the doll's unblinking eyes were now fixed upon her. She could have sworn she heard a whisper coming from the doll, saying, "Emily, come closer." Terrified, Emily picked up the doll and placed it back on the rocking chair. She had enough of her imagination playing tricks on her. As she began to back away, she heard the whisper again, this time with more urgency. "Emily, don't leave me alone." Her courage wavered, and she reluctantly stepped closer to the doll. A feeling of dread washed over her as the doll continued to plead for her attention. "Emily, play with me. Stay with me." In a panic, Emily rushed out of the attic, leaving the doll behind. She slammed the attic doors shut and ran downstairs to her parents. Her frantic description of the doll's strange behavior sent shivers down their spines. They reluctantly returned to the attic with her, but the doll was nowhere to be found. The room was empty, except for the rocking chair that swayed eerily by itself, the doll's glassy eyes and porcelain smile absent. The family searched every corner of the attic, but the doll had vanished without a trace. Thanksgiving dinner was somber that year, with the memory of the unsettling encounter in the attic casting a pall over the festivities. No one could explain the inexplicable disappearance of the porcelain doll, and Emily's fear was noticeable. Years passed, but the Thanksgiving day when the doll disappeared continued to haunt the Turner family. Emily grew up, and as the years went by, the memory of Charlotte's whispering voice and her inexplicable disappearance in the attic remained etched in her mind. As Emily grew older, she was drawn to mysterious and unexplained phenomena, becoming a paranormal investigator. She often wondered what had happened to Charlotte, the Thanksgiving doll that had seemingly come to life in the attic. Though she searched for answers, the doll's fate remained a chilling mystery, a story that sent shivers down the spines of the Turner family for generations to come. As the autumn leaves painted the forest with their fiery hues, 5 college friends embarked on a Thanksgiving getaway. Their destination was a rustic cabin deep in the heart of the North Carolina woods, a place that had belonged to Jacob's family for generations. Little did they know that this Thanksgiving would become a haunting tale they would never forget. The cabin stood in isolation, far from the nearest town, with a chilly November wind rustling through the surrounding trees. It was the perfect setting for a memorable Thanksgiving celebration, or so they thought. The day began with excitement as the friends gathered around the table, heaping their plates with turkey, mashed potatoes, and cranberry sauce. "This is going to be the best Thanksgiving ever," Lisa exclaimed, taking a sip of her wine. Jacob, the cabin's owner, couldn't help but smile. "I'm glad you all could make it. Let's make some amazing memories." The friends laughed, clinked their glasses, and dug into their feast, unaware of the sinister presence lurking in the woods. As the evening wore on, the friends decided to play board games by the crackling fire. The room was warm and cozy, but something felt off. "Did you guys hear that?" Sarah asked, her eyes darting around the room. "Hear what?" Mark replied, shuffling the deck of cards. "It was like a whisper," Sarah said. They dismissed her concerns as the wind whistled through the cabin's old windows. Time passed, and the unease in the cabin continued to grow. Late in the evening, as the group was telling ghost stories, they heard it again, a faint, eerie whisper. This time, Lisa's eyes widened with fear. "I definitely heard something. It came from the hallway." Jacob, ever the protective host, stood up. "I'll check it out. Probably just the wind or a creaky floorboard." With a flashlight in hand, he headed down the dimly lit hallway. The friends strained to listen, their anxiety growing with each passing second. "Nothing here, guys. Just your imaginations playing tricks on you," Jacob called from the darkness. As he returned to the room, Mark noticed something strange. "Jacob, you have dirt on your clothes. And are those leaves in your hair?" Jacob brushed himself off. "Must have bumped into a tree branch or something. I'm telling you, it's all in your heads." The friends reluctantly resumed their storytelling, but the shadow of doubt hung in the room like a heavy fog. The clock struck midnight, and they decided it was time to turn in for the night. Jacob had prepared the bedrooms, each one comfortable and inviting. As they settled in, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The room was dark, and the wind outside howled like a banshee. "I can't sleep with this feeling," Sarah whispered to Lisa. "I know what you mean," Lisa replied. "But what can we do?" Just as they were about to drift off into an uneasy slumber, they heard it again, the chilling whisper. This time, it was so close that it sent shivers down their spines. Sarah's voice quivered as she said, "Lisa, did you hear that?" Lisa nodded, paralyzed by fear. A cold, sinister presence seemed to fill the room. The two friends huddled together, clutching the covers tightly. Then, a soft voice whispered in the dark, right beside their ears. "You should have left." They screamed and flipped on the light, but the room was empty. The cabin was silent. "Did you hear that?" Mark called from the adjacent room. Jacob, still in his own room, heard the commotion and rushed to join them. "What's going on? Why are you guys yelling?" Sarah and Lisa were pale, their eyes wide with terror. They stammered out the words, "There's something in the room." Jacob checked the room, but there was no sign of an intruder. "It must be our imaginations. Maybe the isolation is getting to us. Let's get some sleep." But the whispering continued, haunting them throughout the night. No one in the cabin could escape the sinister voice that echoed in the shadows. Dawn broke, and the friends were shaken from their restless sleep. They decided to cut their Thanksgiving getaway short and left the cabin in a hurry, unable to shake the horror that had gripped them. As they piled into their cars, Jacob looked back at the cabin one last time. In the dim morning light, he saw a shadowy figure standing in the window, whispering the same haunting words. "You should have left." With the taste of terror still fresh in their mouths, they sped away, vowing never to return to that isolated cabin in the woods. Little did they know that the sinister presence that haunted their Thanksgiving would remain a chilling mystery, leaving them with nightmares that would last a lifetime. Thanksgiving had always been a time for family and warmth, but in the Van Winkle family, it was a day marred by an inexplicable horror that unfolded one fateful year. The Van Winkle house, a grand old mansion located in the heart of a quiet New England town, had been passed down through generations. It was Thanksgiving Day, and the whole family had gathered to celebrate. A long, wooden dining table was adorned with a feast fit for a king, and laughter filled the air as relatives caught up on life. As the sun set, and the dinner table was cleared, the family began to share stories and reminisce about their ancestors, who had lived in the same house. It was said that the mansion was haunted, but the family dismissed it as nothing more than folktale. At the stroke of midnight, while the Van Winkle family members enjoyed a nightcap in the elegant sitting room, a bone-chilling wind swept through the mansion. It extinguished the candles and plunged the room into darkness, and the air grew thick with unease. "Dad, did you feel that? It's freezing in here," said Emily, the youngest of the Van Winkle family. Her father, Robert, stood up and fumbled for a flashlight. "Must be a draft. I'll check it out." He left the room and ventured into the dimly lit hallway, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. The hallway was cold, and the wooden floors creaked ominously under his feet. Suddenly, a whisper echoed in his ear. "Get out." Robert's heart raced, and he scanned the hallway, but there was no one there. The voice sounded so close, as if someone had whispered it right into his ear. Shaken, he returned to the sitting room and recounted his experience to the family. They laughed it off as an overactive imagination, blaming the chill on an old house. As the night wore on, the unease in the mansion continued to grow. Strange sounds echoed through the house, and disembodied whispers became more frequent. Even the family skeptics began to question the origin of these eerie disturbances. "Did you hear that?" Margaret, Robert's wife, said as the sound of a faint, mournful wail drifted through the house. The family members huddled together, terrified. They began to realize that the haunted tales of their ancestral home might hold some truth. "Dad, we have to leave. This place is not safe," Emily begged. But Robert, determined to prove that there was a rational explanation for the hauntings, refused. "We're not going anywhere. It's just the wind and old house settling." They stayed up late, trying to enjoy their Thanksgiving as the terrifying occurrences persisted. Furniture moved on its own, eerie shadows danced on the walls, and whispers became more insistent. "Leave now, or you'll never leave." The voice was no longer a mere whisper. It was a chilling, malevolent command that sent shivers down their spines. The family finally decided that it was time to leave, their skepticism giving way to fear. They rushed to the front door, but it wouldn't budge. It was as if an invisible force held it shut, trapping them inside the mansion. Panic spread among the family members as they desperately searched for an escape. Emily, who had been silently praying in a corner, noticed a dusty old journal on a nearby shelf. "Guys, I found this. It's from our ancestor, Jasper Van Winkle," she said, her voice trembling. The journal contained an account of an ancient family curse that bound the Van Winkle descendants to the mansion on Thanksgiving. It could only be broken by facing their deepest fears, which manifested as the paranormal disturbances that plagued them. Realizing they had no choice, the family gathered in the sitting room. The temperature dropped dramatically, and the walls began to bleed with dark, viscous liquid. Ghostly apparitions materialized, each reflecting their deepest fears and regrets. As the night wore on, the Van Winkle family confronted their fears one by one. They apologized, forgave, and found closure with the spirits that had tormented them. With each resolution, the paranormal activity lessened until, at last, the mansion was silent. As the first rays of dawn broke, the front door opened effortlessly, allowing the family to leave the mansion. They were forever changed by the horrifying experience, but had broken the curse that had plagued them for generations. The Van Winkle house remained a peaceful place, no longer haunted by the ghosts of Thanksgiving past. The family would never forget the night when they faced their deepest fears and transformed their Thanksgiving from a holiday of horror into one of redemption and renewal.